Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ben Sachs-Hamilton. I'm the conference director here at NESI, and I'm excited to welcome you all to our first pre-conference webinar for the Building Energy NYC conference. We are going to hear from folks from EnPowered today, one of our conference sponsors, about how to work with Local Law 97 in New York. You can register for the conference if you haven't yet by going to our website, nesi.org. We hope to see many or all of you there in person on September 15th. We also have 3 more pre-conference webinars coming up. Those are on our website as well between now and the conference. So please check those out as well. And with that, I will turn it over to our presenters for today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben, and happy to be here talking a little bit about Local Law 97 and how we're using this to accelerate some projects in the New York area. So we've got Renew with us today as well, and I'll introduce myself quickly here. My name is James Roth. I'm Manager of Operations and Enablement at EnPowered. And really brief synopsis on what EnPowered is all about is our mission is really to accelerate the adoption of clean tech and reduce frictions associated with efficiency projects, peak demand reduction projects, and create a really clean customer experience by providing an on-bill financing solution. So projects can be paid directly through utility bills. So we're partnering with Renew Energy. They're the financial partner here with a lot of our projects in New York. And I'll pass it over to Mike to introduce himself. Did we lose Mike?
Hey, sorry about that, James. I think my internet just dropped out on me there for a second. I'm assuming this is my spot to talk about myself.
Yeah, you're all good. Just a little technological difficulty, no problem.
Yeah. Well, thanks, James. Mike Savage here. I'm the Director of Business Development for Renew Energy Partners, and we provide third-party funding for all decarbonization projects, everything from lighting to distributed generation projects. We really see ourselves as a one-stop shop for helping building owners meet their sustainability targets and improving their facilities. We're very excited to be partnered with EnPowered as our combined offering. Really, we can take the on-bill of EnPowered payments and combine it with our off-balance sheet. So on-bill and off-balance sheet really delivers a lot of value to the customer and removes a lot of friction from getting projects to go forward. So excited to be talking about Local Law 97, which is one of the, I think, the greatest bills and laws created here in the United States of recent years. So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, why don't we fire it up? I want to know a little bit of history around this Local Law 97. Mike, I know you're an expert on it, being down in New York and dealing with tons of projects in this area. So wondering if you can give me what's kind of the underlying objective of why this was created. What are we trying to, I guess, accomplish with implementing this in the state?
Yeah, so the goal here is to reduce energy consumption out of all the built environment, and that's because globally, if you look at carbon emissions, about 40% comes from the built environment. But in large cities like New York City, it's 70% of the carbon emissions are coming from the building stock. So the goal of Local Law 97 is to reduce that, to create a 40% reduction by 2030 and an 80% reduction by 2050. So we're off to some pretty aggressive targets, and it'll be exciting to put those into action.
100%. So, I mean, I guess there's a couple kind of layers to how this starts to roll out. Maybe you can talk to me about how this is being rolled out across the state. I think there's a baseline kind of standard that started this all off. And then from there, that's where we start to look at potential achievements on top of that. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that timeline a little bit more.
Yeah, so the local law 97 is really well over a decade in the making. It all started back in 2010 with local law 84, which was targeting buildings over 50,000 square feet, and that law is really the you can't reduce what you don't know, and so the city required all of the buildings over 50,000 square feet to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager and record their energy consumption. They then followed that up with local law 87, which took it a step further, which required those buildings to undergo energy audits. So they were at least aware of the opportunities to reduce energy, and also required retro commissioning as well. And then the latest iteration was local law 33, and there's tons of little laws in between here and there, but the main one is 33, which I think has the public pressure one. That is the energy scorecard. So they took all that energy data for each building and they applied it to all buildings over 25,000 square feet now. And essentially, just like you go to a restaurant and you see a letter D outside of it, you probably don't want to go eat and have dinner at that restaurant. Same thing with buildings, right? And what's very interesting is a lot of these new buildings and a lot of these LEED certified buildings have D's and C's, because energy consumption is not really part of that LEED ranking. There's a lot of metrics that go into it, but we're seeing new buildings being built that just aren't performing well. And this law is actually looking on ongoing performance, and every year you're going to have to submit your portfolio star report, except now you're going to potentially see a penalty.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's a pretty impressive program. And I guess my next question is, we've got these baselines set up for all these buildings. How does one start to improve on their baseline? What are the types of projects or initiatives that these building owners are getting into to start to try and meet this standard that's being set?
Yeah, so right, the goal of the law is to reduce energy consumption. So the hopes here is that everyone will go out and start looking for energy reduction projects and start implementing those as soon as possible. But there's actually 5 ways to meet the local law. There's the opportunity to apply for adjustments to the cap, because in some situations it's just impossible, and maybe it's you have to create a timeline to reduce your cap. Other ways of doing it are through carbon offsets, but that is only allowed up to 10%. You can only reduce your emissions levels through carbon offsets by up to 10%. And then renewable energy. Obviously, you can't put a very large solar array on top of most of the buildings here in New York City, but you can secure virtual power purchase agreements, which is essentially buying the renewable energy credits of a solar farm somewhere else. The caveat here is that this local law is requiring that solar can only be sourced from solar farms or community solar in Zone J, which is just really a very small area in and around New York City. So there's multiple options of meeting this law, but their intended focus is doing conservations, electrification, really reducing as much energy as possible. And then finally, if you don't meet it, there is a alternative compliance payment, and that is significant. So, they give tons of options. The city gives you plenty of ways of getting about it. And the first penalties don't start till 2024. But at the end of the day, those penalties are coming.
Mm-hmm. And I guess from your experience dealing with some of these, what do you see kind of as the low-hanging fruit in terms of initiatives moving forward? And I'm sure there's kind of different levels that you can start chipping away at this. What's kind of the first steps, and then where are you seeing building owners kind of get into a little bit more intricate type projects?
Yeah, I mean, the low-hanging fruit are things that probably have already been done at most places, right? The LED lighting, the variable frequency drives, those are measures that have been around for a long time. And if you haven't done them, do them tomorrow, right? It's a good investment, and there's no reason not to do it. And it's to help. But in terms of process, it's create a strategy, right? This program is going to be around for till 2050 and probably longer than that. And it works in sort of 5-year increments. So 2024 to 2029, about 80% of the buildings will not see a penalty. They are already at emissions levels that are going to be fine. They don't have to worry about anything, but 20% of the buildings will. And those buildings, you should understand that now and start making a game plan to make those reductions. And then what happens in 2030, of course, is basically the emissions target gets cut in half. So 80% of the buildings will then see potential penalties if they do nothing today. And so the opportunity is huge. It might feel like it's a long way away, but a lot of the work that needs to be done is infrastructure work that is long investment, and you don't want to have stranded assets. So it's very important to start making plans now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, 2029, 2030 seem like they're far away, but we both know how long it can sometimes take to get these projects in the ground and operating, and that timeline is going to shrink very quickly. So, I mean, I think the interesting thing here that everybody's wondering is these penalties, do they actually have teeth? And when can we expect to see these come through? I mean, you mentioned 2029, 2030. Who's going to be affected by these, and how, I guess, strong are these penalties? Is it something that people have to worry about?
Yeah, I mean, these are what I would say significant penalties, and they aren't a blanket, coverage for everybody. Every building type will have its own emissions cap that they have to stay under. And there's about 9 different building types, from hospitality, healthcare, retail, warehousing. Everybody has their own emissions cap. So your school won't be or your self-storage facility has a much lower cap than a manufacturing warehouse or multifamily housing. But at the end of the day, it is significant. The cost is $268 per metric ton, and for an example that kind of gives you a sense of how much that is. Carbon credits, if you wanted to purchase on the market, can range anywhere from $20 to $50 per ton. So we're looking at a $5 to $7 5 to 7 times over the current market of carbon. So it's a significant challenge. If you have a large building, you could potentially easily see $6-figure million-dollar fines come 2030 when these penalties and emission caps get pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty big numbers. And I guess based off of what you've heard or general analysis, how are buildings performing against their baselines? Is this going to affect the vast majority? I'm assuming that most are potentially under the standard that they need to be achieving.
Yeah, so right, until for the next 6-7 years, right, about 20% of the buildings need to do some reduction, whether or take one of those compliance pathways, whether it's looking at renewable energy, some percentage of carbon offsets, but or going down the path, which is what the city wants, is a reduction in energy consumption through conservation measures.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I guess if somebody's maybe new to the scene here and doesn't know their building's performance, where would they start to get that information? I know a lot of it is through the utilities in terms of data and aggregate consumption, but where does that kind of start if a building owner hasn't started looking at their performance? How can they start, I guess, pushing in the right direction with something like this?
Yeah, so the beauty of the sort of the iterative growth of these local laws is that buildings over 50,000 square feet, can easily access this information by looking at their benchmarking reports and understand where they stand. And then better yet, or the next iteration here is 25,000 square feet and above. Those are sort of new additions recently with local law 33, so maybe a little less aware of where that building stands, but your scorecard outside of the building, which had since the last 18 months has had to be publicly posted, is certainly a good place to start. If you see an A, you feel pretty good. Anything less than a C, you might want to start calling around and try and find out a game plan here.
100%. And I mean, I think the interesting piece of this conversation that we haven't even addressed is, yes, there are penalties associated with obviously poor performance related to local law, but a lot of these projects that are required to meet the standard are providing energy savings for these buildings on their own. So a lot of the times you'll see investment just because of these savings, but these penalties are a whole cost avoidance side of this, which really kind of creates an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone here. So I'm wondering, what are the barriers that you've seen, Mike, for building owners to move forward with these projects when there's this massive cost avoidance on the horizon, as well as the ability to achieve some savings when they go forward with these projects?
Yeah. So overcoming those barriers, right? Renew's role in that is providing the upfront capital. We provide that turnkey funding, because what we've seen is that energy projects are good projects to do, but they don't always meet the capital budget for that year. They kind of get pushed down the line when something core to the business happens. So we're here to take on that and use those avoided costs and energy savings. And because of our long-term payment structure, which could be 10, 15, 20 years, we can model it so that when those penalties come, that's when our payment increases. So it all cash flows nicely. James, I would push that question back over to you and the EnPowered group. What barriers are you guys seeing to energy projects in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, capital is always an issue. Obviously, we're going into a bit of a pinch in the economy, I think, as everybody knows. So I think there's always this want to kind of keep capital close and keep it for other potential emergency scenarios. I think the interesting thing is, with obviously these penalties on the horizon, as well as kind of the nature of these projects where these are unrecoverable electricity costs that are kind of stacking up every month you don't do anything. What we're trying to do is bring attention to this and really allow customers to use those savings to pay for these assets. So getting them into that mindset that the budget is really in their electricity bill, use those savings to either keep the bill cash flow neutral or even cash flow positive in some scenarios, and kind of change your mindset on things a little bit. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. I would say definitely, for sure. So
yeah, I think we're definitely aligned there.
And I would say the other thing that is obviously a big one as well is there's sometimes a lot of confusion where these savings are actually going to be seen on the utility bill. You got an invoice coming over here from a lighting retrofit company, somebody over here who's providing HVAC savings. How do you get it all in one place? And that's really what we're trying to do at EnPowered with payments, is put that line item or put that charge right through the utility bill for these projects, where they see the bill come down, they see the charge be applied, and kind of create a little bit better customer experience around moving forward with these types of things, alongside bringing together all these stakeholders, like our partnership between ourselves, to make these frictions hopefully disappear and the ability to move fast. So those are kind of two areas. And I think the other thing, Mike, I might flip it back on you, is when it comes to these different kind of financing structures, one thing that I kind of hear about a lot is these PACE agreements as well as equipment leases. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and how it kind of maybe differs from the energy service agreements that Renew is offering.
Yeah, absolutely, James. So that could be its own webinar all on its own, but within a couple of minutes here, so the key differences here is with the energy service agreement, it's an off-balance sheet service. So we're not debt, we're truly a service agreement, because we measure and verify savings. So we are taking on performance risk, where lease, which is because of changes into the accounting laws back in 2019, all leases, whether you're an operating lease or capital leases, are considered debt. So they're all on book. So we can distinguish ourselves between leases and our service agreement very well. And then you have CPACE, or Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. And that is an agreement where just like, the historic example is just like paying a sewer charge back on your tax bill. Well, this is very similar, that the upgrade actually stays with the property and not the property owner. The value of that is you can get very good terms, very long terms, because it's asset backed and it's on the tax bill. Some of the challenges is you need, in most cases, you need the mortgage holder to give up primary position. So that can become a barrier all on its own in getting CPACE approved. But CPACE definitely is a good option. As of last year, it is an option in New York City. And it's just about weighing the pros and cons to each one, and what the customer wants. And then we think all solutions will be necessary to meet these aggressive carbon targets. And we're just happy to play our role here.
100%. Well, I know we're excited at EnPowered to be partnering with Renew. I mean, this idea of eliminating risk to push these projects forward and reduce that uncertainty from the customer is really what we're trying to do. So I would say, hopefully, with the ability to run these charges through the bill, create that better customer experience, we can leverage this local law 97 as well as the energy savings associated with these projects to really accelerate the adoption of these clean tech initiatives. So with that, I'm excited to open it up for questions. Mike, I don't know if you have any closing remarks in terms of how we can push these things forward faster. I think we've got an interesting offering, at least between EnPowered and Renew, and hopefully we can help not only partners push these projects to their customers, but customers change the way they think about moving forward with these energy projects.
Yeah, I think James, let's leave it. Our combined offering creates a lot of strategic value. We remove a lot of risk, and we make it very simple to go forward. So that's what this is all about, is creating another option. And hopefully will allow more business owners and channel partners to get these projects done.
100%. Get it done before that pinch of these penalties coming into play.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, we're excited to be coming to New York. We're going to be attending the conference. We'll be booth 16 during the Building Energy Conference on September 15th. So excited to get some feet on the street. I'm from Ontario, so I was saying to Mike, I'm excited to get down to New York and see the big city, and hopefully make some connections with both partners and customers at the conference. So looking very much forward to that. And I think with that, we can open it up to some questions. We've got Erica from EnPowered on here as well. Maybe she can start sending some out towards Mike and I.
Hi, we do have a few questions. The first one, does New Energy underwrite deep retrofits?
That is our specialty. We fund energy efficiency and on-site renewables all under the same service agreement. We've done projects that have 30 plus conservation measures all done for the same customer. So absolutely.
Nice. Okay, next question. Does conversion from fossil fuel to electrification count as a credit towards energy reduction?
That's in 99% of the cases, that should be the case, right? Electrification is the end goal here. The city has created different coefficients of carbon per fuel type. So fossil fuel, your natural gas, your oil has the highest coefficient, and electric has the lowest. So anything you can do to electrify, as long as you're not using more units, will definitely lead to a lower energy EUI.
Okay, nice. Another question. I think you said that solar counts as energy reduction, but only community solar. Is this true?
So solar, on-site solar always, and then community solar or virtual power purchase agreements on solar that is produced inside of Zone J counts. So, most likely that means community solar, but there could be a solar field somewhere that's not community solar, that's just getting pushed as a virtual power purchase agreement. But it has to be in, within a, you can Google Zone J Con Ed and look up that map and see where the system needs to be located.
Nice. Next question is, please explain how on-bill financing works.
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, there's two kind of ways forward when we're working with the customer as to how we actually get on the customer's bill. So kind of the more traditional way is we actually become the customer's retailer. So we become their supply provider. And what we do from there is run charges depending on whatever the amount is for the project directly through the supply side of the energy bill. So the customer will see their supply go up slightly due to this charge being added. They'll pay for their kilowatt hour consumption as normal alongside that line item. And then just to make it super clear for the customer to understand kind of that differentiation between supply and that extra charge, EnPowered sends a supporting statement each month. And we break down, okay, what was your kilowatt hour consumption? What was the charge that was added? Are there multiple projects with multiple charges that were added? It all gets broken down on this statement. In some jurisdictions, we can get a secondary line item where we can sometimes include some terminology around the charge that's being added, but more often than less, it's going to be baked into that supply line item. So that's when EnPowered becomes the retailer, but we are also actively working with other retailers who might already be existing on some of these customers' utility bills. We're finding that it's a big value add for these retailers to provide this added service on top of their energy hedging. That is their original value. So we are open to partnerships as well. And we work with that existing retailer on the bill then to run the charge through the similar way that we would be doing it as the customer's retailer ourselves.
Nice. And then I think we have time for one more question. Do you underwrite the two savings? To what percentage of savings?
So it all depends on the capital cost that we are investing. Our goal is to share as much of the savings as possible. Typically that's 15 to 20%. And then we'll develop the term to match that so we can hit our return on capital that we need to make for that project. But at the end of the day, a perfect project for us is one that, is, a 5 to 10 year term, and we're delivering operational savings via, 10, maybe 20% of the savings for that project.
Okay, great. Okay, one last question actually just came in the chat. On average, how often are your projects cost neutral when you factor in cost savings for utilities and possible fines?
On renewal, all of our projects are creating operational savings.
Yeah, and I would say that's really the target for us at EnPowered as well, is to create that cash flow neutral, even cash flow positive scenario. So changing around the term and the monthly payment, so the customer really gets that feeling of the savings paying for these projects. So it's definitely kind of our main goal when we're structuring these types of agreements.
Okay, one more question just came in. How do you acquire customers using Local Law 97? Which channel do you use?
Well, I think it's just a general business development question, but at the end of the day, it's all, anybody in New York City will be over 25,000 square feet is a Local Law 97 is going to be affected by it.
Yeah, and I would say on EnPowered side, our go-to market strategy isn't necessarily to go after the end customer. We normally provide payments as sort of a sales solution to partners that are selling solutions to provide, I guess, improvements on baselines towards Local Law 97. So it's really just kind of an added value piece that our partners are facilitating alongside the use of our payments tool in their sales conversations.
All right, thank you so much, James, Michael, Erica. If you are comfortable, no pressure, but if people want to follow up with you further, feel free to put your contact information in the chat. Thank you to EnPowered for putting this together and for supporting Nessie and our Building Energy NYC conference. Oh, Michael, I think you might have sent that just to me. Make sure it says to everyone. And check out our upcoming webinars. I'll put those in the chat as well. Our next one is coming up next week on Thursday at 1 o'clock. We'll be hearing from folks at NYSERDA about funding for training for building operators. Operations and maintenance should be very interesting. So check that out and check out the conference. I hope to see you folks either at a webinar or in person in New York next month. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone.